Hey there, friend. Chances are, if you're listening to the Inventory Genius podcast, it's because, well, you really want to become an inventory genius. If that's you, then let's stop just listening. Let's stop just collecting information. Let's start doing. I want to invite you to grab your copy of the Inventory Genius book. I wrote this book with you in mind. It delivers bite-sized actionable steps that will help you use your inventory to create more profit and keep more cash in your business. This is a really easy to read book. In fact, I designed it specifically for the busy inventory-based business owner. It only takes about 2 hours to make your way through, and you're going to leave with practical bite-sized steps so you can start implementing the principles of the Inventory Genius method immediately. Head on over to Ciara, Stockeland.com, where you can grab your ebook, your Audible version, or the printed copy. Enjoy! Hey friend, welcome to the Inventory Genius podcast, where we work together here to make you an inventory genius. We talk about profit, we talk about cash flow, and we definitely talk about your paycheck. Because at the end of the day, it's all related to your inventory. Let's go. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the Inventory Genius podcast. I'm your host, Ciara. Today we are not talking about inventory. We are talking about resiliency. This is number 3 in our 4-part series on resiliency here on the Inventory Genius podcast. And I'm really excited about this guest today because this is the first time we've actually met. So we have been chatting in the DMs on Instagram. She is a fellow triathlete, a writer for many well-known triathlon publications and brands. And I think she first cheerleaded us probably on some posts, threw some comments in there, which I just think is so phenomenal in the triathlon world, how supportive athletes are of one another. So we follow one another. I've loved some of the blogs that she's put out and some of the articles she's written. So I asked if she would be willing to jump on the podcast because she is a triathlete and knows just a little bit about resiliency. So Brittany, welcome and thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you. It was really cool. Typically, I am, being the writer, I'm the one who does the interviewing. So this is kind of a fun, twist.
Flipping the script.
Yeah, definitely.
I love it. And you triathlon with your husband, the two of you
Yes.
train together. I love it. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into triathlon? Where do you live? What do you love about it? Tell us all the
So,
things.
my husband and I live in Tallahassee, Florida, and this is my 6th year doing triathlon. This will be his 3rd. Been an athlete my whole life. Rode horses for many years, soccer, tennis, cheerleading, like you do in your kids, and moved here. I'm from Florida, and then went out to Texas for college, came back, and I feel like there's this time period for athletes, especially if you were athletic in high school and college, and then you get out and there's this gap. Like, what are you supposed to,
Yeah.
you can't join
What do I do?
team, and yeah, so you're missing something. And I remember one of my family members said, you should go to the gym. And it was boring. I needed a goal. I needed something to train for. And I started running and then did some trail runs in town. And a friend actually invited me to a local tri club meeting. And I'm like, what is that? And then that one thing led to another. And I did my first super sprint, so a baby triathlon in 2019. I think. And then got with my coaches soon after that. And I've done 6 half Ironmans and then 1 full Ironman, Florida, the end of last year.
Okay. So what's your favorite distance?
Distance, probably currently I like half. I'm more of a long course athlete because I don't quite have that top level speed, but I can go forever. So
Okay,
the
you
half
have an
and the
engine.
full Ironman are kind of my thing. I just my husband, his nickname for me is Diesel because it takes me a long time to get warmed up, but I can go for a long time. So I tend to like the long course stuff.
Yeah, so that long course triathlon would be good. So for those who are listening, what is a half Ironman? Like, what are the distances of the 3 disciplines?
So for half, 1.2 mile swim, then you have a 56-mile bike, and then a half marathon at the end, so 13.1 miles.
I love that.
So 70.3. And then obviously double that would be a full Ironman. So then you have, what, 2.4 mile swim, and then a century, or, over 112 mile bike, and then a full marathon. And yeah, it's a lot, and it sounds intimidating, but I think the great part about triathlon is that it doesn't have to be that long. There are people
Right.
who can do a sprint, a super sprint, Olympic, and these days there's events for everybody. They have aqua bikes where you can, bike and swim. They have duathlons where you can bike and run. And ultimately, I just think about triathlon as being cross training.
Yeah.
It's just, you get to do something different and work on something different all the time, so you never get bored. And there's
I know. I
always,
was just looking at a marathon. I'm not planning to train for a marathon right now, but I was looking at a marathon plan that my friend had the other day. And I was like, I just don't know if I could run every day. I think that's why I love triathlon. It's like, well, today I get to bike and swim. Today I get to strength and run. Today it just jazzes it up a little bit. And for those of us with a short attention span, it's always something different and new, which I love.
yeah,
Love that.
totally.
Okay, so today we're talking about resiliency. This word gets talked about a lot. It's kind of a buzzword. It's on the cover of books. But endurance sports really creates a resilient mindset, because especially any distance, half Ironman, when you are out there for 12 plus hours, going through your day, you have to have something to fall back on. So when you think of resilience, what do you think of when you think of that word?
So I was thinking about this when we talked about this topic, and the way I think about resilience is developing mental strength and having the ability to adapt and adjust, make a new plan, and then move forward, which is definitely what you have to do in triathlon. It's about having the mental toughness to be able to push through and persevere no matter what obstacles you encounter. And there's this cliche that people say, they're like, doing an Ironman is 90% mental and 10% physical. And having done an Ironman, I'm going to say those percentages are a bit skewed. It's more
Probably,
like
yeah, you got to have a little
40.
more physical. Yeah.
But the emphasis on the importance of mental strength and resilience is a good one. Um, and I think a lot of it has to do with preparation being huge,
Yeah.
because I tend to be a what if athlete and also person, just in life. So, what if this happens, and what if this? And I tend to worry a lot. And so the way I kind of counteract that is to think about what I'm worrying about, think about what the best case and the worst case scenario could be. And then I make a plan for what I will do if that thing happens. And I think there are I think people tend to think that resiliency or self-confidence or motivation or all these skills are things you're inherently born with, you just have or you don't. And it is true that some people are more naturally driven or confident, but they're all skills you can train. So you
Yes.
can definitely get better at it. And so that's definitely something that I work on myself. And I think it translates into life as well.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. You talk about like those mental muscles. So when you're training for a triathlon, I mean, you just came from a swim. So I think you had emailed me, you said right before our interview, we're going to be swimming, right? So you're dedicated, you're, following your plan. How do we build those mental muscles? Because I've been thinking about this a lot with my business clients, the difference between wanting something and actually following through on that desire. Like we all want to get out of business debt. We all want to finish a triathlon if, that's what we set our eyes on, or finish an Ironman. But some people don't finish. What does everyday mental muscle building look like?
So I think there's a lot of different things that people can work on. For me, I'm big on the whole kind of sports psychology, mental performance stuff. So I wrote a blog. I have a triathlon blog, Triple Threat Life, and I wrote a post recently about goal setting. So the differences between like process goals and outcome goals. And I think in training, and probably this would translate to business as well, like you have to set different types of goals. So there's, long-term goals that provide like vision and purpose. And that's the kind of thing that helps people stay motivated in training, because they have this big race they're training for. But then
Yep.
you also have to have short-term goals. So those help to boost self-confidence. Like when you reach a
Okay.
milestone, that provides validation that the work you're doing, you're going in the right direction. So, you finish a really, really hard work. I have this happen all the time where my coach will put something in my training peaks, which is
Yep.
a system that coaches deliver workouts to athletes. And I'll look at it and say, oh no,
Yeah.
that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's a hard run or really, fast pace. And then I'll do it. And I'm like, wow, I actually did that. And every time you can do that, and it just builds on itself. So it helps to increase self-confidence. And those are things and experiences I think that you can draw on in life, and like during a race when something goes on, you're like, I have done something like this before. I can do
Yes.
it, even though I'm facing, adversity right now. I think that's a
Yeah.
big.
That's really good. So thinking through that, the other day I did a half marathon and I started getting sick the night before. When you get that scratchy throat, it's like, oh,
Mhm.
please, no, this timing is not good. I wanted to PR, which I ended up not PRing. But I told myself, okay, so this is not exactly how I had it planned. But if I can make it through this half marathon sick, then I'll know I can run when I'm sick and I can finish when I'm sick. So looking at those hard workouts, looking at those disciplines we have to do in our business, those difficult things, those decisions, those conversations we have to have, and saying, I'm going to use this to build that mental muscle because then the next time it'll be just a little easier or I'll know how to do it
Mhm.
a little quicker. So good. So you have a business of your own. You're a writer, you're a
Mhm.
freelancer. How does your training and the mental muscles, the resiliency you're building through training translate to building your business?
So with, being a freelance writer, you get to work for a lot of different publications. And so I write for places like Traithlete magazine. I've written for Xterra in the past. Ironman is a big one. If you've read course previews for Ironman, you probably read one of mine. Um, Outside run. And so you have to be good at um, prioritizing and scheduling and planning. I have a
Yes.
calendar on my desk that has a list of all the things I need to get done in one day, and I check them off, which is huge for me. And that's something we do in training too. Um, as far as resilience, being a writer, and I've been a writer I was the editor of a magazine before I went out on my own. I've actually only been on my own for a year. So I was the editor of a magazine for 13 years before this. And just after getting married, made a decision that it involved a lot of travel. And so
Okay.
now I decided to kind of just write freelance. And most of these days I get inbound requests. So magazines or companies will reach out to me to have me write things. But in my early career, that was not the case. You're
Yeah.
pitching a lot, and I still do pitch. But I mean, just the other day, I sent 12 different article ideas, and one got, picked up. And you can go one of two ways with that. And I tend to be an optimist. So you can think, okay, well, I got 11 ideas that no one wanted, or I got the one that someone did want. So you
Yeah.
focus on it. I'm not saying I'm perfect, because I'm sure probably when that email came back, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like,
Yeah.
but it is something that I have to work on. And I think that definitely that whole process of being a writer and being behind the scenes, and you're putting being a journalist is a little bit different than being a blogger. So journalist is, very unbiased opinion, and blogging is where I can include a
All
little bit of
opinion. Yeah.
creativity. So it's a little different now because I'm putting a lot more of myself out there too. And that gets a little bit, it feels a little dangerous sometimes,
Yeah.
especially with critiquing that goes on, online and with social media. But I think you have to learn how to kind of flex that muscle of practicing. At least it's something I have to do. I have to work on almost daily.
Yeah, I know, don't we all? But that's really good. Like you said, it's a little scary. It can feel a little dangerous to put yourself out there. Just like, you take on a your first Ironman or a really difficult course, and you think, oh, I don't know, did I bite off more than I can chew? But pushing ourselves is what creates that strength and ultimately the resiliency. So it's super exciting to see just how what we do in our athletic life can translate to our business life.
I always tell business owners, sign up for something, a 5K, just walk it. Like sign up for your first 5K or sign up for a relay with a friend, because that training, like you said, the discipline of the schedule, the pushing yourself to do something that you never thought you could, does translate to the strength that we can find in our businesses as well. So speaking of triathlon specifically, what do you think your toughest challenge has been? Did you have a really hard race, or when you look back?
I was thinking about this, and I've had a couple of things. I did the 70.3 World Championship in St. George, and that was in 2021,
Mm,
the year of the massive storm. So we
you
had,
were there. Oh, I remember that. Oh,
yeah,
geez.
we had
Okay.
30-mile-an-hour wind on the bike. We had hail, we had lightning, and I at a certain point, I remember coming up over, we're cresting a hill, and there's people who are just standing on the side of the road with their bikes because they're trying not to get blown over. And at that point, it got a little bit scary. And so I thought, I'm like, okay, well, I just need to keep moving forward. So, you're only going like 5 miles an hour at that point.
Yeah.
You have to make a decision,
Yep.
right? Are you going to stand here? Well, the weather's not getting any better. Are you going to keep moving? Eventually, it will improve. And it did. We got halfway through the bike and the storm dissipated and the run was hot, oddly enough.
Of course.
Um,
Yeah.
so I've had things, like that happen. And I'm in Florida, interestingly enough, you have the things that you do not prepare for. I got stung by a yellow jacket coming out of transition on my quad. So I rode the
Ooh.
first half of the bike ride with the leg that was on fire.
Oh,
I mean, I've had weird things that happen, but when you had asked me this question, I thought the most challenging thing that I've ever had happen to me in a triathlon is sorry, the dog.
I didn't
um
even hear.
Chattanooga 70.3, and it was last year, and the race was going awesome. I was on track for a big PR. We had worked really hard and done a really hard block leading up to it. And mile 8, so not that long left. You have a couple miles left. Got violently ill, really sick on the course, and that was something that was very challenging for me because you work for what 4 6 months on something, and we didn't exactly know what happened. It turned out I had an issue with nutrition that had never presented itself before. And that kind of letdown it was more
Yeah.
mental than
So
physical. It wasn't a question
disappointing.
I was gonna finish the race. I was gonna finish it. It was more, why did it happen? And
Yeah.
unfortunately, we got a couple months later, a second race getting ready for Ironman Florida. It happened again. Augusta 7.3, and exact same thing. 8 or 9 on the run, violently ill, and getting ready for your first Ironman about 2 months after that was it was a very stressful time period because
Yes.
you're trying to figure out what happened, make sure it doesn't happen again. And I'm lucky I have amazing coaches who have experience with nutrition. We even got some outside help. And so we figured it out. But that was probably the biggest challenge I've faced thus far in triathlon. And I think it's the things you can't prepare for. And I like to
Yeah.
be a prepared athlete. But that's what they say, especially when doing a long race like in a full Ironman, something's going to go wrong, if it's a little thing or it's a big thing. So you prepare and ahead of time something's going to go wrong, and I have to be able to adapt, adjust, and continue moving forward. And if that people who can do that in life and athletes who can do that in a race are going to have a more, they're going to be more successful, but they're also going to have a more enjoyable time doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you said, I mean, the hardest part of that was probably the disappointment. You're thinking like, why? Oh my goodness, why does this have to happen right now? I think about that in business. I work with a lot of people on money and financials. And so sales are down. We have to close a location. We're in a lot of business debt. Things are not the way that I anticipated. And so to work your way through that disappointment is sometimes more of the battle than the actual activity that's disappointing in and of itself, you know?
Definitely.
Yeah. And so just learning how to observe, pull in experts. Like you said, you talked to your coach, you talked to experts that your coach knew, because sometimes it's outside of us what we can figure out. Like we need to bring in other people. That's so important. And then having that support system, which I know that you do with your triathlon club and your husband, and people that can say, yep, super disappointing, but you got this. We can do it the next time around. That's so important too. Okay, so talk to us a little bit about your blog. I found you through your article where you were just talking through some health issues and kind of what you discovered. Why is it important for us to advocate for ourselves as part of resiliency? I see a lot of people that rely on everyone else to fix their problems instead of digging deep to figure out what's going on, like you with your health or with something we want to learn or what's going on in our business. Talk me through being an investigator of our own circumstances.
So I am the type of person who I am very, and probably from being a journalist, I'm very black and white, and I'm very research driven. And if I don't know something, I want to figure out the answer. And I'm big on, like I had said, preparation. And I think there's, some people, when you're talking about like from an athletic perspective, I think there's so many mental strategies that kind of relate to resiliency. So like whether you're, overcoming nerves on race day, or like you're using breathing techniques or visualization or positive self-talk. I know some people kind of scoff at that idea, like it's too airy fairy or like feeling for me. But there's a reason why elite athletes and top sports teams often have a mental performance coach or a sports psychologist on staff, not only because it works, but because it's necessary in order to compete at a high level. And so when there's something you can't figure out yourself, it is helpful, to do research, find an expert. And in relation to what you were talking about with the blog post I had written, I discovered I was anemic actually when I first started. So that is iron deficiency when I first started running. And it was a chance encounter I've had with a running coach who came to talk at our tri club that I learned about it. I was having a really hard time breathing, and for a 30-something woman who seemed relatively fit, there was something unusual going on. And my doctor had never checked me for iron or anything because I was a normal human. I was functioning fine. But as athletes doing what we're doing, we're not necessarily doing normal things. And so
right.
I remember him saying, if I have women who are having these type of issues, I typically have them test for their iron levels. And I later learned it's something that's incredibly common with female endurance athletes and just endurance athletes in general. It turned out a couple years later, I would meet my husband, who is a doctor. So now he keeps an eye on my levels for me. But at that point, I was extremely low. I had to have infusions in the hospital. And I think my doctor at the time, I had told her to check my iron level. I said, please, can you just run these tests? And she said, wow, she's like, I'm surprised you're still standing, not just running, and it was something that got overlooked. And so I think part of the reason I wanted to start the Triple Threat Life blog was because I think that I'm kind of in a unique position with my job, being a journalist. I get to talk to experts and top coaches and professional athletes, and I get to learn so much. And then also being a triathlete for the past 5 years, I've learned a lot. I have incredible coaches, and I just like to help people. And so I want to share what information I have. I find myself, I was sending messages to people back and forth on Instagram, and there needed to be an outlet where I could kind of the way I think about it is I want to educate, inspire, and empower people. So whether it's in triathlon, it is mostly focused on triathlon, or in everyday life for business or whatever. I think you can that was the whole theme behind it. You can be a triple threat in any area of your life. Obviously relates to swim, bike, and run, but so definitely you have to advocate for yourself and kind of take things into your own hands sometimes.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I think I was already following you, but I read that article, and I love how at the end of it, you shared that the reason you were able to investigate more what was going on with you is because someone else had shared their experiences. And I just think we can never have enough of that in life, where people are willing to say, like, here's my story. Hopefully it can help you in some way. And then we take that story and we use what we need to and we pass that on. That's what I love about the triathlon community, which you and I were talking about before we jumped on. Just we all understand the pain and suffering, which my daughter Bella said. She's like, she did an Olympic distance. It was a really high attended race, so like a lot of elite people. And then when she was done, she said, I actually love the Ironman experience more. And I said, why? And she said, because when you're out on that course running, in everyone's eyes as you pass them, they're like, I know the pain. You all understand like the sacrifice and the pain that it took to get you there. And there's something really unique that brings people together. So whether you are an athlete that's listening, a small business owner that's listening, maybe a mom of young kids that's listening, find your community of people that know and understand what you're going through and connect with them, because we do not need to do any of this life alone. There's plenty of people to connect with.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is a benefit of social media these days, because it is easier to create community with people. There can also be a negative side to it, but I think for the most part, yeah, that's one of the best parts about triathlon. I met people running on the Ironman Florida, like the marathon course. And we chatted as we're running about, oh, this is my first one and your first one too. And you automatically have a kinship with people.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the incredible things about triathlon, but you can find it in other places as well, and kind of other areas of your life. So there's this cliche, find your tribe, but there is a point to it, to find people that you can make you accountable, and also help to inspire you, help to, give you knowledge. But I think also one of the biggest things triathlon has given me is the ability to help other.
Yes.
5 years ago. So that's the whole thing. If you can pass along pass on the information that you didn't know when you started and you've learned along the way, it's almost better than achieving it yourself. My husband said that the other day. We led group rides leading up to Ironman Florida, and we had a group of like 12 athletes. So we all had the same coach, and so we trained together doing the same rides. And seeing all of them complete their first Ironman, he's like,
yes,
it almost makes me feel better,
I know.
than doing something yourself. So community is really important.
I know, and there's something to that. It does feel so good to give. I had posted something on our Bella and I, our triathlon page a few weeks back, and someone comment or DM'd me and said, can you put any tips for beginners in your content? And right now I was like, what am I gonna share? Because I feel like we're just starting out. And so have just been thinking about like, what would I have liked to know? So
Yeah.
I know lots of people probably know this. I did not, because I never rode a Peloton before. I travel a ton, and a Peloton's a great way to get a bike workout in. And that would seem like, I was like, who would want to know that? But then I thought, you know what? I didn't know that. So I could share that, and maybe it would help someone where they can say, oh my goodness, I don't have my bike. So just those simple things. And it does feel really good to give back and share. People can do what they want with it. But yeah, we've seen a lot of good social media interaction, the way that social media is supposed to be used, on our Instagram page, which is how I met you. It's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. It was very exciting to get to see kind of your guys' story as mother and daughter training, and then now it's father and you got son and grandma. So everyone's getting involved in
I know.
training so much better. My husband does it with me.
Yeah,
I mean,
rope them all in. It's all good. Yeah. I love it. Any other words of advice that you have, maybe for those that are listening and just thinking about starting or doing their first athletic event of some sort, whether it's a race or a triathlon, just a beginner's word of advice that you'd like to give?
So this is funny. I actually was talking to someone at the pool who just came to one of our triathlon club's open water swim practices over the weekend. And, I hadn't seen him before. So of course I hone in. I'm like, who are you? Are you a triathlete?
Yeah.
He said, not yet. He's like, I'm getting ready for my first sprint. And so I think just talking to people, some of the most important things are preparation, obviously, but making sure that you don't take it so incredibly seriously. It is a fun thing. So you need
Yeah.
to remember to like infuse some joy in it. That's kind of the whole reason we're doing it. But if you want to do your first triathlon, obviously you need to work on swimming and cycling and running. But the distances are relatively short for a sprint triathlon. So it's something that anyone can do. And I think probably if it's someone who's getting ready for a half or a full Ironman, like a big commitment, it's remembering that to take one step at a time. Because I think sometimes things, whether it's a triathlon or just things in general in life, can become very overwhelming when you think about them in a big piece. So chunking things up into little pieces, even if it's a short race and you have to ride a bike for 12 miles and you have to run 3 miles. You don't need to think about everything. Think about what you are doing right then in that moment. And it helps you to be mindful so you stay grateful, but it also doesn't, it prevents you from getting overwhelmed. And that's probably just like focusing on one thing at a time. And that's probably the best piece of advice I could give to a beginner just starting out.
Yeah, so good. And that definitely translates to business. Focus on one thing at a time, small, bite-sized, actionable steps done day in and day out will definitely get you to your final destination. So thank you so much for joining me today, Brittany. It was really fun to chat with you.
Of course. Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun. And actually, I will see you at the end of this month.
I know. We just found out we get to meet in person. I know. It's going to be great. This is our first time doing it. You've done it in the past. So you were giving me some tips. I'm excited. It sounds like it's going to be a hot race, but that's okay. Another challenge. So it'll be good.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? Where can they read your blog? How do they reach out?
So we are currently doing some rebranding right now, but it is currently on bybrittanyvermeer.com. So just like a byline, my name. But yeah, and then I have my Instagram is the actual name of the blog. So at the Triple Threat Life. And yeah, they should follow my page and your page as well, and they can learn all the fun things about triathlon.
That's right. All the exciting things.
Just life in general, because I think a lot of times what I try to do at least is kind of use triathlon as like a lens we can, look through to kind of view life, because it's related, I think, in so many ways. Just setting goals and kind of dreaming and working hard and then achieving, and just part of life in general.
It is. Well, I'm going to drop your links and your handles in the show notes, and then I'm also going to grab the link for that goal setting blog that you wrote. I think that would be a really great, helpful tool for all of our listeners. We can always look at setting goals from different lenses. So I think looking at it through this athletic lens will give you some thoughts and ideas on how to set goals for your business as well. So I will also drop that in the show notes. Awesome. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today to the Inventory Genius podcast. If this episode was helpful, if you think of someone who's thinking of doing their first event or really wants to dig into the topic of resiliency, will you please share this episode? And I would love it if you would leave a review or shout out and send me an email. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what you learned today. I always love to hear from you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Hey friend, thank you so much for tuning in today to the Inventory Genius podcast. If there's something that you heard today on the podcast episode and you want to dig deeper into becoming an inventory genius yourself, I want to invite you to head on over to my website, ciarastockeland.com, where I have multiple ways that you and I can work together on your inventory. I want to help you with your profit, your cash flow, and your paycheck, because at the end of the day, it's all related to your inventory. So head on over to the website, connect with me. I'll work with you soon. See you then. Hey boutique owner, are you ready to go from drowning in busy work to dreaming about the future? Simple Strategies Group creates automated marketing systems that work 24/7 so you do not have to. And you know how important I tell you it is to have automated, simplified systems. And that's why you need to get a hold of Liz. Liz Whitehead is a certified Klaviyo Master Silver partner as well as a certified Postscript partner. She knows her stuff. She works with e-commerce product-based businesses to implement email and text marketing strategies that build trust and nurture your customer relationships. She wants to do this for you so that you can start to focus on the front lines of your boutique business. So visit simplestrategiesgroup.com for more info. That's simplestrategiesgroup.com.